And for more on all of this, let's bring in Eric Farnsworth. He's a senior associate at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. He's also served the U.S. government at the White House, State Department, and the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative. Mr. Farnsworth, it is great to have your experience here on Prime. Thank you for joining us. First, let's get right to it. How rare is it for the U.S. government to directly intervene in another country's currency market like this?
Hey, Gio, it's great to join you and your viewers. It's very rare, particularly for a country like Argentina, which has a record of default going back many years. In fact, previous U.S. governments have wanted to support Argentina from time to time, but they generally do it through vehicles like the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, or the World Bank, such as institutions where they don't have such direct exposure and risk. So I think this is very rare in that context.
And the Treasury Department has actually not responded to ABC's request for details here about this agreement and the purchase of Argentine pesos. How unusual is it for the Treasury itself to stay sort of silent about these agreements? Well,
I mean, normally you would want to promote what you're doing and full transparency and to get public support in doing some of those things. I obviously can't speak for them, but the president did host President Milei today. They did talk about it, so they're not keeping it secret, but perhaps the details are yet to be worked out.
Is there a world in which this agreement ends up hurting U.S. taxpayers?
Yeah, sure, there could be. I mean, if you're swapping for Argentina's currency, the peso, and the peso devalues, then you're left holding the bag. But the bigger story here is that you don't want the Argentine economy to collapse because certainly you have a lot invested in it through a huge amount of international debt that Argentina holds, and that would be systemically difficult. But also there is a demonstration effect here to try to support President Milei in terms of his reform agenda that I think the Trump administration not only supports that agenda, but wants it to be a bit of a model for the rest of Latin America. So there's a much bigger story here, too, that goes beyond Argentina.
Well, on that point, could this be a wise move by the U.S. to, bolster our relationship with Argentina while even maybe freezing out China and Russia?
Well, absolutely. That's the gamble that the Trump administration is taking, and it is a gamble. And in fact, I think President Trump said that as much today. He said, well, their failure is possible. Much depends on the viability of the Milei agenda, whether he can get it through Congress, whether Congress remains favorable to his agenda, whether the Argentine people remain willing and patient to put up with the costs of the reform agenda, and there are costs. Having said that, if they come out successfully on the other side, the Argentine people, I think, will certainly have a better position, but the possibility that the United States voiced to tell Argentina to say, wait a minute, let's think twice before we get so close to China, I think that voice is going to resonate a lot more.
Eric, you heard me talking to our reporter Matt Rivers here earlier, and I was saying that this sort of feels like it came out of nowhere here. What do you think tonight is most important that the American audience watching this understand about this?
It didn't come out of nowhere, but for those who don't follow these issues, sure, yeah, this would be the first time, and the timing is complicated. As you mentioned, the government is shut down, and there are a lot of complications certainly around the world. But I think that what the American people need to understand is that Argentina is a friend. There are big issues here, and at least for the moment, there's no the risk of the U.S. taxpayer being on the hook for this is probably pretty limited, but that is something that remains to be seen.
All right, very important information there. Eric Farnsworth, thank you so much for joining us here on Prime.
No, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.